Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Artist Talk event. Today, we are going to introduce Yuki Hayama, the ceramic artist, and Paul Greenhalgh. The title of this event is Yuki Hayama, Complexity and Emotion in Japanese Ceramics. So we are very happy that this event, we first welcome you from UK and from New York and from Arita in Japan and in Tokyo. And it's a very universal event. And so good morning, Japan, good night, Japan, and good morning, New York, and good afternoon, UK people. So before we are going to have the event, we would like to share some guidelines. So please set your view to gallery view to see the participants and mute your microphone during the event. Turn your camera off. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to type them into the comment section. This event will be until 11 a.m. here in New York, and followed by Q&A session. So feel free to put any comments in the chat box. So about artist Yuki Hayama. Hayama was born in 1961 in Arita, a historical Japanese ceramic center. At the age of 15, while both head and hand were young and flexible, he began learning to throw pots on the potter's wheel and to decorate them by painting on them. Through years of dedicated study, he has built unprecedented skills. His intense questioning of why, for whom, and how he became the source of his creativity. He wants to bring light to the humanity he loves, to create work that will be eternally beautiful, even if broken into fragments. That passion is, to him, a divine mission. Through research on ceramic chemistry and glazes, he has achieved his unique technique for creating fine gold lines. Manipulating minerals like an alchemist, he has set off a revolution in the 5,000-year-old tradition of painted porcelain. Yuki Hayama is an exceptional artist whose ceramics resemble gleaming, finely polished gemstones. Those who see these works of ceramic art are drawn into an uncanny world, unable to discern the era or the land in which they were produced, but enchanted by the energy they embody. To those of us who live in that irreplaceable moment, they communicate both a deep history and grand narrative that connect us with the future. The brushwork is stunning, delicate, with multiple lines of cobalt blue appearing in spaces barely a millimeter wide. The motifs appear swiftly without underdrawings, emerging from memory through the artist's subtle sensibility and mastery hand. Those motifs or patterns cover the whole of the jars and bowls, even the invisible undersides of the plates. Layers of rich colors are built up in repeated firings so that every piece is fresh and full of vitality. The beauty of life, the theme of this exhibition, includes every living thing in the natural world. Flowers in full bloom, animals leaping across the land, trees, arabesques, and fish dancing in the water. His motifs appear to leap out from his ceramics, to free themselves and enter a three-dimensional world. In Hayama's patterns, every line is saturated with a vital spirit, a prayer and a universal love of humanity, all captured in a living but ordered cosmos. These works show us the paradise to which humans facing death, living in a world of chaos, nonetheless continue to aspire. To create living motifs, he closely studies history, learns from classical models, and immerses himself into the civilizations and spiritual worlds of humanity. Following in the footsteps of predecessors whose works have been described for thousands of years in myth and legend, Hayama finds a compass that points toward the future, and his own fantastic narrative is born. In it, he sings of humanity's fragility and strengths. Little by little, the characters that appear in his tales take form and become his motifs. Only then does Hayama replace his pen with the painter's brush and turn to the potter's wheel. We, Ippodo Gallery, have held the first solo show in 2016 in New York, and we are currently holding his second solo show in New York until June 11th. After traveling from Tokyo Ippodo Gallery, we are delighted to sharing this joy and beauty of Hayama's work and porcelain stories, which allows us to inspire generations to come. So our special guest speaker today, Paul Greenhalgh. He is Executive Director of the Sainbury Centre and Professor of Art History in UK. He recently published the book, Ceramic Art and Civilization. Actually, the book is here. He has engaged the epic span of ceramic art's history with a maker's hands. And we are very excited that how Paul can bring into this conversation with his remarkable insights. And he is, in fact, named a title of this event today, Complexity and Emotion in Japanese Ceramics. So good morning, Yuki, and good afternoon, Paul.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Yes.
And then we are going to introduce Harry Shelley. He's going to be a translator today, which is very challenging, but very, very important. Thank you so much, Harry.
Thank you. 頑張ります。
So, 葉山先生、おはようございます。
おはようございます。こんばんは。
Yes.
Good evening, good morning.
こんばんは。
So, how are you? 葉山先生、そちらは夜遅いですけども、大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫です。
And then, Paul, how are you in the afternoon in UK?
Oh, well, the sun is shining here, which is very rare, you know.
Actually, it's interesting.
As you know, normally it rains, but so I'm very happy. And yeah.
Actually, it's funny because in New York today it's rainy, so. Okay, so I would like you to take on this conversation, Paul and Yuki.
Absolutely, yeah. Hello, Yuki. It's a great honor to be able to meet you, and may I say, incredible, wonderful work of great beauty. And the only thing I am sad about, I wish I was with you in Japan talking face to face. Would be much nicer. My first question really for you is...
先生、はじめまして。本当に光栄です。もし日本に行ったら顔を合わせば話できればいいと思っているんですが、残念ながらこちらでよろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
Yes. My first question really refers to how you describe the exhibition. I read that you said the current exhibition for you is about the story of ceramics and porcelain and the Garden of Dreams. And the story, you say, refers to the history of human beings. Could you talk about that a little for us? your work as a story of human beings and a garden of dreams.
先生、今回の展覧会について聞きたいんですけど、もちろん以前お話になったんですけど、この展覧会はなんていう人生の話、人生の話題についてとおっしゃったんですが、そのテーマについてご説明をお願いします。
はい。今回は、僕の場合ずっと歴史をテーマに作品をこれまで37年間制作してきました。その中で、今現代社会が迎えていること、そして、今後未来を少し考えたこと、それをテーマとして、それを自然界、の中での作品の表現、そこにこだわりを持って作品の制作を行いました。
So this time, for me, I wanted to turn history itself into the theme. And I was thinking, Sensei was saying that he was thinking about what kinds of issues and realities is contemporary society facing. And he took this idea of where we are going as a people in society, and we want to turn that into a theme and a subject upon which he could create his works.
That's interesting. We tend to think that there is a history of people, of human beings, and that natural history is a different thing. To what extent does he wish to bring the history of people and the history of nature together? To what extent is that the big theme?
先生、すごく面白い答えありがとうございました。普通には人間の歴史があって、その代わりに自然の歴史もあって、それは別々として考えられているんですけど、どのぐらいこれを一緒に考えられている制作したと思いますか？
はい。人類の歴史も、ごめんなさい。人類の歴史も歩みも、人間も自然界の中で生かされている、一つの生き物です。そういう中で、実は人生のことも一つの自然に置き換えて物事を考えた表現を行っています。例えば今回メインになる作品は、春、夏、秋、冬の四季のお花を描いた作品。これは自然界に咲く草花の美しさだけの表現にとどまらず、人間の生き方ということにも着目しながら制作を行っています。
So in the history of humanity, we are always living in and among nature. It's in a way that we are all one unified natural living being. And so it's these circumstances that Sensei is creating these works, and he's particular in one of the main objects from this exhibition, he would included flowers from all the 4 seasons, and just trying to create this universal representation of I guess of existence, you could say, in his creations.
Very interesting. To what extent is ceramic and porcelain important there? First, we think of East Asia, we think of China, Japan, Korea as the great porcelain nations. So that's an interesting thought. But to what extent is ceramic exactly the correct theme? Because recently in a piece of writing I did, I talked about, in some ways, it's a way of artificially making stone. You take the earth and you make it into stone. So it relates closely to the earth. Is it important for Yuki, the ceramic medium in that sense? Is that important? And also we can start to think a little bit about Japan and Japanese culture. Sorry, was that a bit generalized? Do you want me to re-say it?
No, I'm sorry. I type what you say down, so I try to remember as many as your points as you made, and then I try translating it. 先生、どのぐらい陶芸や陶磁器、特にその素材は大事だと思いますか？特に普通に陶芸や陶磁器について考えれば中国、日本、観光について思い出すんですけど、特に大事な陶芸国家について考えられているんですけど、どのぐらいその以前お話になった題についてその知らん板書、例えばどのぐらい陶芸は正しい商材と思いますか？特に以前グンハン先生がお話になったんですけど、陶芸そのものは土から石になる技術なんですけど、その代わりについてご意見をお願いいたします。
陶芸の歴史っていうのは人間が生きてくる中である意味一番最初に創造したものなんです。歴史的には2万年の歴史を持っています。で、興味が一番深かったのは、僕が今歴史にこだわった作品は歴史にこだわった作り方をしているのも、これは原点がそこにあるからなんですけれども、2万年前に作られた陶芸っていうのは、生活様式の中で必要なものだったんです。で、生きていくために食料が漏れて水が張れれば用途として満たすのに、そこにわざわざ幾何学的な模様とかさまざまな文様を太古の2万年も昔の人々は刻んできています。そこには大切な生活の中で生きていくための道具に人間が持っている変わらない普遍的な祈りや願いの世界を表現してきたから。それが原点にあるからです。
So, the history of ceramics is something that comes along with humanity, and it really is one of the first things that people were able to create, certainly in a long-lasting form. And it's a story that goes back 20,000 years. And when making things, Hayama Sensei will think about this history and how he's working on it and how his works sort of relate to our present day culture and society. But when you think about these ancient works, we're talking about really utensils and tools that were really essential to people's lives and livelihoods. And these are the kinds of objects that they both created for their daily use and also decorated to create this pattern of visual motifs that we see going down through the ages, and also of objects that we use going down through the ages, and really just connects us all the way going back. And so he has that mentality in his mind when he's doing his own works and creations and thinking about how they relate to our present society.
It's very interesting, I think, and I have looked at very early ceramics myself quite recently, and scientists now can date ceramic far better. We think that so far the very oldest figure in fired ceramic we have is 30,000 BC, same age as the cave paintings of Lascaux. But we think the oldest ceramic culture now making vessels is the Jomon people of Japan, the very early Japanese, and we have things from 29,000 BC and probably older. So the second thing which is interesting here is because ceramic does not deteriorate, we have it. The history of painting is really 500 years because before then, most of it has gone, and metal. So it's the broad question is, to what extent does Yuki think that time is central to ceramic, and to what extent is time the subject matter of ceramic? It's to what extent is it underneath every subject in ceramic because of these things?
先生、今の技術では昔の陶芸はもっと詳しく時代をさせることができるんですけど、陶芸の像として考えれば、もっと3万年前のそうですね、3万年前に作られたものと考えられるんですけど、その歴史でもちろん縄文文化が初めて陶芸を作った文化でもう2万9000年前の陶芸が見つかられたものなんです。その代わりに絵画陶芸以外の長く残らない芸術についてそのことを比べたら陶芸の方がもっと長く作ったままで時間とともに流れると言えますね。そしてその質問になれば、その時間の流れと陶芸の関係についてちょっとご意見をお願いいたします。
おっしゃるように、陶芸は半ば自然界の鉱物からを原材料として全て制作していきます。しかも1300度を超える火力の中で焼成することで、半ば永久的に何千年何万年と、たとえ破片になっても残っていける、そういう魅力っていうのは大いに感じています。僕が作品を制作するにあたって、2つの視点で作品を作ってます。今現状作って制作して、
切った方がいいかもしれない。ハリー。
ごめんなさい。
Go ahead, do the translation first.
Oh, so there. Okay. Well, just as you said, there's ceramics as an aspect of nature. It's something that we take the materials and just through very distinct natural processes create these works that really can just last forever and ever. And when I think of my work and my ceramics, there are two vantage points that I work into them.
It's very interesting. And I was going to say that one of the great ceramic designers of the 19th century said he loved ceramic because it was worthless. It's mud. So everything has to be made by the artist and comes from nature. It's not like gold or diamonds. You have to make something with it. It's made from earth, and so has no money value. Its value is entirely creative and artistic, if that makes sense.
May I ask who you're quoting?
Christopher Dresser.
はい、 クリストファー・ジェッセ19世紀のクリストファー・ジェッセ先生がおっしゃった通り、陶芸は泥から作られたもの、あまり大切じゃない素材から作られたものなので、その芸術的な部分は全部人から入れ込んでいる芸術だと思います。いや、以前先生の答えは以前時間と陶芸の2つの視点についてお話になったんですけど、どうぞお続きください。
ごめんなさい。今はい、僕の作品の作る2つの視点っていうのは、今現在制作して完成したもの、完成した時間、生まれたての作品、そして普遍的にこれが100年、500年、1000年経過した後に変化していく姿ということも想像しながら、実は作品を制作しています。そのために何層もペイントを重ねていく、下絵、素焼きに直接コバルトで描く作業、そして釉薬をかける、その上にまた彩色を施す、今回発表している作品の中で一番最多重ねた回数は12回、実はペイントをして焼成を繰り返して、12回の繰り返して、色を重ねていって表現をしている作品。それも実は500年、1000年後の変化していく姿っていうことも想像しながら作品を作っています。
So when Sensei creates works, this is, I believe, the first of the few points he's creating. He creates them in the idea of the things that he's creating and completing, and how those objects that he makes will both change over the process of the course of him creating the object, and then how they will, as they go through time, change in perhaps very, very subtle ways over hundreds and thousands of years as the object continues but is affected by the nature around it. And in terms of his own process, it's a highly detailed layering of stages that I think he's getting at this idea of how time is baked, no pun intended, into the object itself, where he paints and then fires and paints and then fires, layering the cobalt and the other pigments to as many as 12 times, and I think I believe for 12 times for most of the objects in this show, to create this fully completed object. And he's thinking about, as he's creating, he's thinking about both the time that's going into the physical creation and the effect of time on the object as it goes forward.
Fascinating. I think, Shoko, if we could show a work by Yuki for him to talk to us about it in this way, I think would be very interesting.
So the 10,000 flowers are one of his symbolic, iconic patterns he created. It's showing now, 先生これ何種類の花が描かれてましたか？
こちらの作品で128種類。
So 128 flowers on this one piece and one actual series. And as he said, in order to realize those numerous layers of colors, palettes, he fires about 12 times.
Wow.
Yes, it's almost like an alchemist, that it's beyond ceramics. To me, it's a gemstone or jewelry of the porcelain. Yes.
It's amazing. So as we look at the symbolism, because alongside the idea of time, Yuki talks a lot about legends and myths and divine mission. There is also almost a religious, spiritual idea underneath. which obviously connects to nature. We have the term pantheism, worship of nature. Can he talk a little, as we look at this, could he talk a little about that, about the who are these figures? Who are they?
So
And how do they yeah.
葉山先生の作品はやっぱりこの神話だとか伝説だとか歴史的なこの人間が持ってきたストーリー、物語というものが反映されているんですけれども、神話にしても伝説にしてもやはりそれは自然というものが基本になっているだろうと理解していて、とりわけこの女神の作品についてどういう背景がありますか？
はい。今画像に映っている作品は3400年前の神話のお話を表現して描いています。満月の月の中に生きる永遠の命を持った女性の姿という神話です。
Oh, so I thought he was going to keep going. So the figure on this painting is based on an ancient Chinese legend of a moon goddess, a megami, and particularly of this beautiful woman who appears in the full moon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If we then move on, Yuki has described his subject matter as to do with universality, and uses the idea of universal. How does that relate to Japan and Japanese culture? In that, and it would be nice for Yuki to talk about the Japanese heritage and how, or perhaps East Asian heritage, and how he sees that in relation to this idea also of universality, of making art which appeals to all people. It's an interesting relationship between the specific of Japan and his idea of universality. If that helps, Harry. Yeah.
作品にこう取り込まれている世界観がやはりいろんな文明だったりとか、とてもユニバーサルな普遍的な方向性を持ってはいるけれども、葉山先生自身が日本人であり、また日本というかアジアという中に自分の血を受け継いでいる中で、普遍性、このユニバーサリティっていうのをどういう感覚でお持ちなのか、そのあたりを聞きたいということですね。
例えば一つのデザインについてお話しします。代表的にお花を描いた作品があります。実はこれは美しく咲くお花だけではなくて、花は必ずやがて散りゆきます。朽ちていきます。そして地面に落ちて、翌年また美しい花を咲かせる。実は作品の中にはそうやって朽ちていく姿っていうのも作品の下辺の部分、下の方ですね。下辺の部分に実は朽ちていく姿を描いています。実はこの考え方っていうのは日本人独特の考え方です。老いてなお美しくなる、朽ちていくこと、去りゆくこと、哀れみもあるけれども、そこの中には美しさもあるんだということを実は表現をしていく。作品の中には実は日本人が持っているそういう心情というものも表現をしています。
So one design that Hayama Sensei would like to talk about is he paints, as we've discussed, many flowers, and when he paints them, he doesn't just paint them at their peak moment of blooming beauty, but also as they are fading and decaying. And a key part of flowers and nature's universality is that flowers will return to the earth and become the fertilizer for next year's flowers. And this idea of recognizing and portraying decaying is something that Hayama Sensei thinks is part of how Japanese people appreciate nature, and something that they frequently present and highlight in their art.
Especially in, actually we have the term in Japanese, ichie. Yes, it's how treasure every meeting, and for it will never recur. So Japanese aesthetic has this appreciation on this present and the moment. So it's okay to decay, it's okay to broken, but again, the moment is most beautiful. So that's I would believe that essence in Yuki's work entirely. Even he paints flowers, even he paints the meticulous lines, that this kind of a fragility and little sadness under this joyful nature is revealed, which is quite a profound story to viewers.
When we think of, actually when we think of many countries, but think of Japan, if we think of Tokyo, we don't immediately think of nature. We think of very complex, technological, millions of people, complexity, loudness, culture, and so on. And then if we think of the Japanese countryside, we think of superb, sublime simplicity. And actually quite often we think of Japanese culture, a lot of great Japanese art is very complicated. But the Europeans, when they first discovered Japanese art, they also loved its simplicity and purity. And there seems to me to be an interesting tension in Yuki's work between the complexity of the surface, the pattern, and the simplicity of the form, the shape of the vessel. So I wonder if he's interested in this idea of simplicity, complexity, and does he think that's part of Japanese, does that come from Japanese heritage, does he think?
先生の作品はとりわけこの表面が大変複雑な緻密な彩色が施されている。でそれはまるで日本という国自体が例えば東京だと本当にいろんな人がいて都会で雑音があってもう複雑だしテクノロジーが入り乱れている。でとりわけ田舎に行くとそこはまた純粋なシンプルな素朴な本当に世界がある。で先生は形はとってもシンプルで素朴でこう洗練されている中に表面はとても複雑で、入り組んでいる。この辺のこの対比を自分はポールは感じているんだけども、その単純性と複雑性についてお考えはお聞かせくださいという。
はい。そうですね。まず、シンプルに表現できることは一番最良だと思います。実は僕、この陶芸を志していなければ、小さい頃の夢って小説家になりたかったんです。いつも作品の中で表現したいことは、内なるもの、いろんなストーリーがあって、僕の中で。それを表現する一つのテクニックのツールとして実はこの技法を使って、表現をしているんです。実は本当に自分の中にある一つの哲学っていうものを作品の中にどう表していくか、そのテクニックとして技術も磨き、いろんなことに挑戦をしながら実は制作を行っています。ただすごくシンプルなのは、形もそうなんですが、実は筆も、見えますか？これが僕の使っている筆で、筆です。 この一本の筆で結構たくさんの毛束がある筆なんですが、本当に髪の毛よりも細い線で描ける。技術を磨けばいろんな表現ができる。もちろん生き生きとした線、力強い線も描ける。そのようなテクニックと、そして想像を融合して作品を作っていくっていうのが僕が最も表現したいことです。
はい。So, precisely, and Sensei is saying that he thinks it's very important to create objects that look simple. And when he's thinking about what is simple, as thinking about his works and how to present them, he searches for the story that will exist within the object, and he aims to bring that out in the design. And then he uses various techniques and processes to then create the works that will best reveal that inner story. But as you say, it's not just the form of the object that is simple, and it is the design itself which is fundamentally a simple design, where you take in. He was holding his sensei mo fude mo misete kuzanai. Sensei fude o chotto misete. もう一度、はい、ありがとうございます。はい。for example, he takes his brush, and it is indeed a very, very simple tool with which he can do line by line, which is not at all complex, and it's the flower itself in its individuality is just lines on the painting, and he's just using these extremely simple techniques in his minds to then build out and create these objects.
Mm. Is it important to him that the objects are vessels?
先生の作品が器だと重要なことと思われますか？
先生の作品がこの器の形をしているんですね。結局表現とは言いながら、彫刻ではなくてあくまでも壺だったりとか花瓶だったりとか、器であることの重要性はありますかという質問です。
はい、はい、ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。そうですね、あります。形もデザインもパターンも表現の中ではすごく自由なんですけれども、でもシンプルな中の美しさっていうものは形の中に常に求めてます。で、パターンを表現しなくても、真っ白で焼いても美しいもの、ろくろで制作をして、そのものの形自体、絵はなくても美しいもの、それをまず選択をします。その上に装飾、ペイントをしていって、さらに荘厳に表現をしていくということを考えています。
So yes, the form, the design, the patterns, these are all important, but the beauty of an object is really something that starts with its form. And you can have a simple design. I think he said a plate, which is just painted, just formed on the potter's wheel and perhaps covered with a simple white glaze, and it can be deeply beautiful. So that is the beginning standpoint from which the rest of the object's aesthetics and beauty can emerge.
Mm-hmm. Mm. But going on from that, historically, what is interesting, say, for example, the ancient Greeks, the decorator, the person who painted the surface, was often different from the person who made the pot. Often the ceramic was made in teams. Is it important to Yuki that he controls the entire process, if you understand? Does he see it as a completely individual expression? Because especially in the history of Western, of European ceramics, often it was a group of people. Does he have thoughts about that? Does he have thoughts about the individual and the making process.
山先生の作品に関してなんですけれども、
はい
結局昔のその古代ギリシャ、例えばだと、その素焼きの作る人と絵付けをする人は全く別で、まあ、チームワークといいますか、やっぱり職人のグループで一つの作品を作ってきたっていう歴史が、
はい
葉山先生のお考えはどうですか？つまり素地を作る人と絵付けを施す人とはやはり同じ同一人物でなければいけないのか、あるいはその何でしょう、このチームワークが成り立つものなのか、それが自分の表現として可能なのか、その辺の気持ちを聞きたいですね。
チームワークで制作していけるものだとは思っています。ただし、オーケストラと一緒で、その形を考える、パターンを考える、全体的な構成を考えるっていうのが作家の役割だと僕は思っています。
So creating works as a team is also, of course, something that we've done. But in Sensei's process and opinion, it's something thinking about the form, thinking about the design, thinking about the object as a totality is something that he really thinks about as an important part of his process and his procedure to create the images and the objects that he wants to create.
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, the most important thing is that this artwork is like kind of a music, kind of an orchestra. So what you mostly take care of is that how you compose, how you produce, how you operate, and how you make it happen. So like a composer and then conductor is different. So that's what he takes a teamwork in a ceramic world.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We tend to think of this last century, and especially the last 50 years, as being to do with modernity and cultural globalism. I just wondered how, in broader sense of where Yuki's art fits in the world, how he feels about the idea of modernism. I noticed that he was interested in Italian neo-realism, for example, and other movements within modernity. He may not think about this at all, of course, but I was curious about current movements in the world and if he thinks they're important and if he sees himself in that world at all.
先生、以前の100年間の時に、以前の30年間、よく現代的とモダンのことについて話しているんですけど、そして先生が自分の言葉で以前モダニズムとイタリアのニオモダニズムについてちょっとお話になったんですけど、少しだけ先生のこの現代の陶芸家と美術界の立場についてご意見をお願いします。
以前、イタリアのネアリズム運動の話をしたことがあります。作品の中にも陶芸とはいえ作品の中にでもいろんな国境も越えて、時間も越えて時代も越えて、人々の心に残っていけるもの。僕が以前お話したのは実はイタリアの映画のお話なんですけれども、古き映画のお話なんですけれども、 実は小さな頃、僕、幼い頃に見た映画なんですけれども、すごく今も心の中に残っているんですね。つまりそういうような作品を作りたい。心の中にずっと記憶の中に残っていくような作品を作りたい。そういう思いがすごく強くて、その中にはでもしっかりとした哲学があって、決してハッピーエンドな映画ではないんですけれども、しっかりとその人その人の人生観の中でものすごく深く感じることができる、素晴らしい作品だと思っているんです。そういうような作品をいつかこの手で作ってみたいと思っています。
So Sensei has indeed written and spoken about neoclassicism, and within his works, and though they are ceramics, he wants to create things and thinks of them as objects that can surpass national borders or an individual person. And he discussed and described how, particularly as a child, he would watch these Italian neorealistic movies, and they really made a tremendous impression on him and inspired him to try to create works in that vein of philosophy and this idea that an object doesn't have to all be about having a happy ending or a complete conclusion at the end, but really that the object and its art should reflect humanity and the lived experience.
It's interesting because often we think of pattern in relation to abstract art, art that does not really have a narrative or a story. Yet it seems that Yuki's work, the story, the expression, the narrative is extremely important. So there's an interesting relationship between pattern and story. Is that central to him? Is that important to him?
よく芸術ではパターンというとアブストラクト芸術が思い出すんですが、先生の作品ではパターンがあってもそのストーリー、その話題も大事だよですね。なので、その内なるの話について、そしてそのパターン特にの関係について、ちょっと説明してください。
はい。見た目の美しさってあると思うんです。特に陶芸の場合は多くが考えられるのが見た目の荘厳さや美しさ、というものが求められると思うんです。しかし、本来陶芸の中にもう一つあった一番最初の冒頭に言ったように2万年以上昔の縄文の時代から作られてた土器に刻んできた人々が考えてたことは、今日よりも明日が良くなるように、自分たちの血が枯れることなく次の世代、その次の世代へ、未来に自分たちの子孫の時代にしっかりと繁栄をしていきますようにということを願った、実は人間が持っている普遍的な祈りや願いの世界っていうのが本来焼き物と文様がパターンが一つになった意味だったんです。そのことの原点を大切にしながら、もちろん美しいものをね作っていきたいとは思っていますけれども、ただ見た目の美しさだけではなくてしっかりとした魂があるもの、それをパターンとして人の生きてきた魂をパターンとして表現できたらなと僕は願っています。
So when you the beauty of an object is there. The first thing that we think of when we think of beauty is obviously the beauty that we see in art, is the beauty that we are seeing with our eyes, and this is particularly so with ceramics. That the first inclination is to see the physical object and react to its physical beauty. But if you particularly, Sensei says that if you look at ancient ceramics, and that particular objects that are really intended to be created and then passed down through generations, there is this unseen layer of pattern and meaning that gets attached to the object itself and to the ceramic tradition that is then being the artistic tradition that is then creating and being created around the object as it moves through time. And he concludes with this idea of the soul, and which is not quite as intense a word in Japanese as it is in English. The spirit of within both ourselves and the objects that also get passed down as they're moving through time.
And tamashi is spirit. You translate tamashi and spirit behind, and then the base of the producing art is always that people's prayers and people's wish for the better tomorrow, better than today. Tomorrow should be better. That's the essence in the spirit that every humanity tried to make art, and so that's what he follows, and then that's he wanted to share through the work. And so now it's 11 here in New York, and actually midnight in Japan, London in 4 p.m. And we are going to have some Q&A session to pick up a few questions from the audience today, because it's so valuable to have the conversation together. Is anybody would like to have any questions? Feel free to let me know, let us know. So I see many friends here. So how are you, Rick? Maybe it's a
perhaps it's either too late or too early for everyone.
It's okay. So
it's just the right time in the UK. But
yes. Yeah. And then actually I am witnessing that through this conversation that the ceramic is always a bridge between new encounter, like you, Paul, and Yuki, beyond languages, beyond cultures, and beyond backgrounds. We could speak a lot of things. And as he, years ago, when I asked him why Yuki is so making effort to have such meticulous and precise and layers of days and days and months for working. And he said, it's not just making a decoration on the surface. The patterns is about the prayers and wish. And now we got this idea that it is becoming a new language, that patterns can be a communication, and then people sees the patterns and the surface. Beyond surface, we are drawn into his world. We name this exhibition Garden of Dreams. Now we can have, we are entering in this Garden of Dreams. So I would like to really discuss through my work in the future that what's this ceramic can be and what's beauty in the ceramics. And I think I have a chat box here question. I don't see any questions, but Paul, do you think we are enjoying the conversation?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there is a question from
yes.
in the chat box. Yes, there is a question. Yeah, can you see it? Yeah.
Yes, so does Yuki intuitively resolve the challenge of making a pattern as complex as that 10,000 flowers flow perfectly around a sphere? Or is that a quite technical aspect of how he creates his art? Harry, can you help?
はい。ちょっと難しい質問なんですけど、頑張ります。先生が、特に絵付けの時に、ある作品はちょっとバルみたいに丸くて、その1万の花は、感傷的で、描いているんですか？それとも、特に技があるんですか？
そうですね、この
技術が。
直感的にこの文様、これだけの複雑な花を描こうとすると、その構図ですとかなんとかとても複雑なんですけども、直感的にそれは成り立っているのか、あるいはすごく緻密に技術的に計算されているのかどうか、ちょっとそこを聞きたいということなんです。
ありがとうございます。
2つ、まさに直感的なものと緻密な計算です。僕は全てフリーハンド、下地全くないところに直接ペイントを描いていきます。で、描くときに緻密な計算を頭の中でやるのは、色の組み合わせ、季節の組み合わせ、大きなお花、小さなお花、そのバランス感覚の組み合わせを直感的に頭で読み解きながら、手の中に記憶しているお花のパターンを感覚的に描いていく。
So to answer Rick's question, he said he uses both, which is very, very technical and calculated, precise, planned and precise ideas beforehand. But at the same time, very intuitive, very sensible, physical reaction. And then that's both is important. And especially what he cares is the balance of the colors, compositions with the colors, and also compositions with the mixtures of the seasons, which is pretty Japanese aesthetics, I believe, that he really cares seasons, how harmonized together. And that's the two important things. But to your question, he works in the both sides. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, I have no idea how he has this brain together, this very physical and very intuitive and soulful and spirit, but also very technical, scientific approaches into the one piece. So thank you so much, everybody, to join us. This exhibition is going to be until June 11th. We extended this exhibition in New York until June 11th. And we are currently showcasing his over 20 wonderful pieces. And then we also have the new website showing that interactive page that showing the 3D of his works. And then the Garden of Dreams are receiving enthusiastic reception, but at the same time, at this current status of the world, people cannot really come and see in person. We try harder as a gallery to make something more virtual and interactive. And we have been working very excitingly for this project at the same time. So it's our new feature of the show. And everybody is here. Thank you so much, Paul and Yuki, Harry.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
Thank you so
ポール
much.
さん、ハリーさん、ありがとうございます。
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everybody.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.